Welcome, I'm State Representative John Hampton, and in Simsbury this month it's Handicapped Parking Awareness Month. And to discuss this critical issue with me today is my special guest, Mike Jennings, who's a disability advocate and a member of the Simsbury Aging and Disability Commission, and Gary Gray, Officer Gary Gray with the Simsbury Police Department. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, John.
Today I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to talk about the issue of accessibility for those with disabilities and how important it is, and how folks like you, Mike, are facing increasing challenges in this day and age that you should not be facing as it relates to accessibility, especially for parking. I don't know about you, but, well, I do know about you. There's many times where I'm at the post office here in town and someone has just pulled in to run into the building to get some stamps, and they've pulled into the handicap spot just to run in. And I've also been around town where handicap spots are obviously being used by people who have the permit but don't need necessarily the handicap parking space. So I thought it'd be great for you guys to come today and talk about the issue, what we're doing to address the issue, and maybe seek out some solutions. So I'll start with you, Mike, and wanted to get your experience, and I know you've been a tireless advocate.
First, I'd like to talk about who's allowed to use handicap parking spaces and who isn't. Only people that have a valid handicap parking permit for themselves can use a space. They either have to be the driver or a passenger in the vehicle. So the spaces are not meant for people just parking for a minute, like John mentioned, or delivery trucks, or people with children. It's only for people who have a valid parking permit.
But Mike, you bring up a good question, and Officer Gray, I'll ask you this. If what if your car that you're driving has that permit, but it's your grandmother's car? So you're Johnny, the grandson, who borrows grandma's car, and obviously you're not disabled. Is he or she allowed to use that handicap spot?
He or she is allowed to use it exactly as Mike said. Mike quoted the law word for word. The operator of the vehicle has to be disabled, or the operator can transport a disabled person. The permit is issued to the disabled person. So the grandmother or grandparent or whatever, the disabled person must be in the car, either an occupant or the operator. Mike's 100% correct.
What if you discover that it's a teenager who's just borrowed the car and they're using that permit?
That's a violation.
Okay.
They will be cited for that.
Okay. Good to know. Go ahead, Mike.
Also, I want to talk about how to correctly park both in and next to handicap parking spots. This poster shows.
Middle.
Here you go.
Gary can hold it. He'll be your Vanna White.
There we go.
A car parked correctly in a handicap spot. Notice next to the spot how there's the striped areas. These are exit aisles, not for anyone to park in or on, whether you have a permit or not.
And people, we've seen a lot of cases where I think people think for some reason that that's okay.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
That's not part of the spot. But you yourself.
We did have an issue in town with a business where we had a delivery truck that was parking here.
Yeah.
And the operator did think that he was allowed to park
It's like
there.
a free zone.
Right,
So
exactly.
for
It is
you
not.
to get out of your, I mean, it's a practical matter too, because you need that space,
Yeah.
right? When you get out of your van.
I have a special ramp that deploys that allows me to get in and out.
Okay. Mike's ramp will be deployed to the side of the vehicle, so he needs this hashed area for his ramp to be lowered down and for Mike to be able to disembark from the vehicle. on either side. So that's the purpose of the hash marks being there. If somebody comes in and takes that spot, it prohibits Mike or anybody with a
Sure.
disability from exiting their vehicle or entering their vehicle. This is not used for delivery trucks or just to run into the post office, as you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, let me point out the spaces next to it. So people need to stay in their spaces, not go over the areas.
Okay. So oftentimes, I mean, you're conducting your business, you're able to drive.
Yeah.
But there's been times where you want equal access to a shopping development, so to speak, and you've had instances where you can't get in and do your shopping.
I've kept a log 27 times in 4.5 years I've been blocked. What happens, I'll get out of my van, okay, go into a store. Then when I come out to leave, I can't because someone has parked in these areas, so I'm stuck. So approximately once every 2 months, just imagine if you, once every 2 months, when you come out of a store to leave, find the cars on either side of you parked within a foot so you can't get in your car. That's what it's like.
Now, what happens, Gary, when you see a violation? What is the violation? What is the exact?
The violation is parking in a handicapped place without a permit.
So do they get a ticket?
They
or
get a
what?
ticket.
Okay.
We have two options. The state issue ticket is $150.
Okay.
The town ordinance violation, which most officers will write, is for $50.
Okay.
You brought up a good point, John, when you said that the post office, somebody running in, they just need a minute to run to the post office, whether it's 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 second. You park there in any of those areas that Mike showed you.
Yeah.
It's a violation. You will be tagged for it. The problem that we're facing is that we're doing patrol checks in the area, and we're really putting it as a high priority this month because of
Absolutely.
the recognition of handicap awareness, parking awareness. So we're making extra efforts to get out there and enforce this violation. The problem that we're having is that when a civilian calls in for that complaint, we get the license number or we'll get just an anonymous call about a parking violation in front of, and I'll use the example of maybe Fitzgerald's.
Sure.
We arrive on scene and the vehicle's gone. But the anonymous caller, they don't want to leave their name. And in order for us to enforce that violation, if we don't see it, we need a signed complaint from a witness.
Okay. All right.
So if there's a witness and they don't want to leave us their name, we can't take enforcement action.
Now,
So we're stuck.
are plazas like Fitzgerald's and other stores, businesses, are they required to have a certain amount?
Yes.
Of, how many spots?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the lot, John. There is a scale, depending upon, and it's by state statute. What they look at is the number of square footage in a parking lot, for a parking lot with 20 cars or more. And again, this is, I mean, for your legislative
Yeah.
purposes, please take
Sure.
that back.
Yeah.
And so, for
Okay.
a parking lot for 0 to 200 cars.
Oh, it's based on
It's based on
percentage.
percentages.
Okay, so,
So, based on the size of the parking lot and the availability of parking spaces, it's a gradual increase.
Okay.
So please take that back for your hearings and, use that.
Yeah, I think it's important too for the business owners, to be aware and make people aware because it's the right thing to do, but it's also good business because, you're going to drive your van around to another plaza where accessibility is appreciated and valued.
I already do that. I tend to just go shopping at places that have good parking for me. Other stores I won't go to.
Yeah.
And just because I'm handicapped doesn't mean I'm not a customer.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we have, again, equal access, not just to parking, but to all our buildings and facilities. Now, this year during the legislative session, Senator Witkos and I worked on some legislation to tighten up the enforcement of violations to make it an automatic violation as opposed to a warning.
Okay.
And that legislation didn't go too far, although it went quite far because of Mike's advocacy, he testified at a public hearing, and in the end, I know Senator Whitco's placed an amendment on another bill. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yes, specifically, right now, it's up to the discretion of the police officer who sees a violation. He can either do a verbal warning, a written warning, or a ticket. This law said they have to issue either a written warning or a ticket.
Now, what's your, as a law enforcement officer, what is your perspective on that? Was that give you some teeth? Would it be?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
The 16, 17-year law pertaining to speeding violations for those teens were mandated by state law right now. The way the statute reads, that anybody who exceeds the posted speed limit more than 20 miles over the posted speed limit, there are certain actions we have to take. We have to seize their license for 40 hours. They also receive a summons to go to court, and they're facing a 60-day license suspension. Now that's mandatory under the statute. If Mike's bill goes through, it gives us more enforcement action, and that we won't have that discretion on what type of action to take. We will be mandated that we have to take either a written warning type of action or issue the infraction. Okay. So that gives us a more focused enforcement action. So
my personal feeling is that by giving mandatory either written warnings or tickets, the number of violations will decrease dramatically. Right now, people realize at most they'll probably just get a slap on the wrist, and they keep doing it. So by requiring either a written warning or ticket, I think that will help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Do you also think that it might help? We talked earlier about driving and who's in the car and who's driving the car. I don't know if there's been any movement on trying to restrict the person from using the car that's issued to the person that has the disability. I don't know. Would that be?
That's really overstepping.
Yeah.
To limit something like that. That's you're really limiting their rights. Technically, is
Well, no, it would
usage
keep
of a vehicle.
Because Grandma could let Johnny use.
Grandma could let Johnny use the car.
Yeah.
But if Johnny, like we said before, if Johnny's parking in the handicapped spot, and this permit is issued, just to Mike.
Well, so. Mike, how hard was it to how hard is that to get that permit? I mean, you have to go and convince. Do you have to convince and show cause that you're disabled, and what determines a disability?
The application that motor vehicles requires needs to be filled out by your doctor.
Okay, so there is a checkpoint there so there's no fraud or
right.
abuse.
Other thing I'd like to bring not everyone who's disabled and needs a parking pass is in a wheelchair like I am. There's other disabilities, so it's not up to the average person to question a person having a parking permit. It's a doctor.
That's a good point, because one day recently I saw someone getting in and out of a car with the permit and jumping into the car, really, and I'm like, wow. Again, it's not our point. I can't go up. Nobody can go up and say.
It's a tough situation.
But sometimes, obviously if someone's in a wheelchair, that's but that's sometimes you do worry that maybe somebody is abusing it. You hope.
You hope not.
Obviously that now, how long is that permit good for?
One is good lifetime. Right now, any new ones are limited in time. They no longer issue unlimited times.
Now,
I forget exactly how long.
4 year.
4 year.
4 years.
Now, in Simsbury, you mentioned we do go above. There's a state dictate on terms of what the violation is? $50, is that what you said?
$50 is the town ordinance
the
violation,
town.
which most of us will issue. If we're driving through a business area and we see a vehicle that is parked in a handicap area, most of the officers will issue the town ordinance violation, which is a $50 violation.
But you
So
could
we'll
go
take it.
more.
We could go with the state violation. The problem with the state violation is that we're issuing that violation, we're issuing it to the registered owner once we run it on our computer. So we're going to run the license plate on the computer, find out who the owner is, and then we're going to issue an infraction in that person's name. Whereas versus just issuing the infraction to the registration when it's a part with the town ordinance.
Okay.
If Mike gives me a complaint on a license plate and I see the vehicle operating, I'd be more apt to issue the state infraction for the $150 because I have operation of the vehicle, by the person that committed the violation. I'd be more apt to issue the state infraction for that violation under those circumstances. But a parked vehicle, I'd be more apt to issue the town ordinance violation. So it depends on the circumstances, John. So we're looking at two different things here. So.
Over your years, you must have had many stories of people's excuses for parking in a spot. Do you have any anonymous, excuses that you've heard?
What you said is probably the vast majority of the cases is that I'm only running into the store for a minute. I was only parked here for a minute.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, the major excuse that we get.
Yeah.
Well, I was only gone for a minute. Well, I'll flip it around and says, well, when you're speeding 60 miles in the 40, you're only doing that for a minute also.
Yeah.
So, it's if you're there, you don't have the proper permit, you're in violation of law. Whether it's 1 minute, 1 hour, whatever, you're in violation.
Let
You're
me
susceptible
just
to the
ask
fine.
something about that. I personally experienced people cut in front of me and take a handicap spot that they don't have a permit for. So just a minute, but they basically drive right in front of me, blocking my access.
Now, Gary, can you deputize Mike? I don't
I'll
want
take
you
him
to,
in the car with me.
Yeah, I don't
We'll
want
go-
you to give
we'll
him.
go hunting.
Please don't give him a weapon. He is a great, as you know, a great.
Mike has the best weapon in the world. He's here out in the public. He's
He is.
advocating for
Yeah. He is.
for people with handicaps, and he's the best weapon that we have right
Yeah,
here. And
absolutely.
there's your best weapon to fight this right there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And let me just say, I believe since I'm in a wheelchair, I firsthand experienced these things. That's a big difference, I think, of people just observing and living it.
Yeah. Mike is with other great folks on the Aging and Disability Commission, and recently, as you know, Mike, we conducted an audit of town buildings to look at it from the accessibility standpoint. And as you recall, we were at one building, and there was a wand on the outer door to get in, the button.
Right.
And then we went
Push
into
button.
the inner door, and there's Mike sitting. They didn't think to put
The interior.
The interior. So sometimes, as advanced as we are, we don't do enough to. Mike's the guinea pig, so we went building to building. And but it's true. There's so many little things that you can do that I know a lot of the banks are doing now. The counters that they're actually putting lower.
Yeah.
Was it like a flip
Right.
ledge, Mike? To
I've seen different types. One bank, they have a special fold-down lower table.
And there's so many other areas that we can do better. I know we've talked about voting and how making it easier to vote for those with disabilities. And someone recently said to me, well, they can come out to your car now, which registrar voters can do,
Right.
and take the person's vote. But, I said right back to them, well, they want to vote like everybody else votes.
Mm-hmm.
It's equal accessibility. They want to be able to get into Henry James or Terriffill School and to vote like anybody else votes. So what is great, I know a lot of older folks do take advantage of that curbside service, which I think might be dictated by law. But I know you face these obstacles every day, and are we making improvements?
Specifically, at the November election last year, a violation. I had parked to vote, and a car next to me violated the law. That got me started on advocating this new law. So that got the road rolling.
No, it's, and I have a friend of mine, another freshman legislator, whose legislation was to make sure that all state buildings are completely accessible. Now, what that means is, as you know, there's certain buildings that are grandfathered.
Right.
But his proposal would be quite costly, but the idea is to not grandfather certain historic structures, and which is an interesting concept. It didn't go. It turned into a task force to a study to look at it. But you know, I'm sure you would appreciate it because there's probably a lot of structures that you can't use that are limited by that grandfather clause.
That's right. That's right. Correct.
Now, what else are we doing on the Aging and Disability Commission to, I know we're engaging the high school folks. They made that poster to help us. You and the Simsbury Police are doing the awareness,
Correct.
stepped up in
Right.
enforcement. And how's that been going? Have you been?
No, it's been going very well. There's been, through the Board of Selectmen when that was forwarded from them, also from SCTV, our enforcement actions. And I want to go back to a point that you brought up, John, about somebody that gets out of a vehicle and they're parked in a handicapped parking spot, and they do have the parking permit. I mean, it's obvious that Mike has a disability. These permits are also issued for certain debilitating illnesses, heart disease and things
Sure.
like that. So people may see an individual get out of a vehicle, but you made the comment that you saw, I think you said that somebody was, scrambling out of a car.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be an obvious disability. The person could have a heart disease or whatever.
yeah.
So those are other disabilities
Absolutely.
that are covered under the parking permit.
Yeah.
So just because somebody sees an individual that has a parking permit, I don't want them to assume that it is a violation. I mean, call us. If they're parked there and you think it is a violation, please call us. Let us go check it out. And that's our job. Let us check it out. If it is a violation, by all means, we will take enforcement action against it. But I just don't want the assumption to be just because you see a parking
Sure,
permit
there's a lot of different
that there are
issues
certain
that people-
disabilities. And also, we have issues with the way that the parking permit is displayed. Somebody will see a vehicle that's parked in a handicapped parking spot. They will not see the parking permit because either it will be up in the visor or it'll be on the dashboard or on the console. And then we'll have an officer come by, he'll write an infraction for it, and then we'll have the person show up at the PD and say, listen, I am disabled, I was parked here. And we've had instances during this period of time with the heightened enforcement that we've had to take, but the administration has decided to take the infraction back. So we
that-
do have to also display this properly.
Okay, now that is on the.
This should be on the mirror.
The rear view
It should be
mirror.
on, excuse me, Mike, let me
Okay,
just
yeah.
show this. There is a hook here. It should be displayed on the rear view
Okay.
mirror. However, you cannot operate your vehicle with this displayed on the mirror because you're obstructing your view.
Okay.
So when you do park the vehicle, it's supposed to be properly displayed, hanging off the rear view mirror, so anybody coming by can readily see this.
Okay.
Right? And also, we can see that Mike's is a lifetime permit.
Okay.
The normal type of handicap sticker will have holes punched in for the month and the year. So it's easy for us to take a look at a permit, see if it's a valid permit, if it's an expired permit. And also, as far as the discretion goes on our end of it, and I know I've done this myself, I'll get a call for somebody parking in a handicapped parking spot. And I'll go down to the area and I'll look for the vehicle and I'll find it. And a gentleman came out using crutches with a broken foot. Now, he has the availability to get a temporary permit from the administration of the police department. I'll pay a $5 fee. But from my perspective, he's temporarily disabled. So am I taking enforcement action against that person? It's a tough call,
one.
John. It's
Yeah.
tough, and
Absolutely.
I think Mike would agree that's a temporary disability. Did
Yeah.
he follow the proper process by getting the temporary permit? No. But to cite that individual, it's a tough
It's
call.
tough.
It's a
Let
tough
me
call.
just point out that if you have like an invalid reason, is say you have kids with you, or if you're feeling extra tired that day, someone about closer to the business you're going to do. Those are not valid reasons.
No, absolutely. And I think it's really important to, in this month, and always, especially with younger folks. I know, Mike, you and I have talked about some violations at the high school and the junior high, and it's important to get younger, and that's why it's great we're getting the high school kids involved and, and making sure that they get the word out, and that younger people know right out of the gate that how important this is. And it's so important that you point out some of the, the real limitations that you have if the people don't follow the rules on a daily basis. So your work is really important on the Aging and Disability Committee, and your work is really important. And maybe this year for the next legislative session, we can talk about fine-tuning the legislation even more, enhancing it, and moving forward in a positive direction. And as we talked earlier, it's important to get your folks. You're the ones on the we're the lawmakers, but you
we have to enforce them. And I'll tell you, I'd love to have some type of committee set up where law enforcement could work with legislators. So that we can both look at the law and
that would make
take a look at it, so we can see that we can't enforce this because of, or there are certain loopholes within a law. But the enforcement efforts are only as good as on-site observation is one thing, but in Mike's situation, if somebody sees the violation and the vehicle leaves, we need that statement. We need that corroboration.
So you're not telling folks to take the law into their own hands?
No, God, no.
Except Mike.
No, no, even Mike, no.
He's got his badge.
Mike, no.
But I mean, if you do see a violation,
exactly, call us. But note down the license plate. And I know you've had scanners, so you've been in town many years.
Sure.
We'll get a call about a speeding vehicle heading northbound on Route 10 or operating erratically, but they will not want to make a formal complaint. So we'll have to find the vehicle, observe the vehicle. If we do see a violation, we then can take enforcement action. But if we don't find the vehicle and the person that complained, the complainant does not want to give us a written statement, we don't have any recourse. We can't do anything about the violation. And same thing with the parking. If somebody will give us a statement, we don't see the violation, please give us a statement, let us take that action. We're more than happy to take the action, but unless we see the violation, we cannot take the action. So we need help from the public also.
Well, folks, we're running out of time, and I think it's really been a great opportunity to talk about this critical issue and make sure folks in Simsbury this month and always respect those with disabilities. And Mike, why don't you sum it up and tell everybody the message of the day?
The message of the day is only people that have handicap parking placards or license plates issued for them allowed to park in the handicapped spaces.
That's great. Mike, thank you for all of your hard work on behalf of Simsbury. You're a great advocate, and you're such a valuable resource to Simsbury. So we thank you for all your efforts and for being here today. And Officer Gray, thank you. And the Simsbury Police Department does an amazing job for our town. And we can't thank you enough for all that you do.
You're quite welcome.
And for SCTV, thank you to the volunteers, the staff, the camera crew. Thank you to the folks who are at home watching. And hopefully you've learned something today. I know I have. And we'll see you soon again. Take care. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.